It was an ordinary Tuesday morning at Briarwood High, but for Mr. Thompson, it felt like something was about to change. The school day had just started, and as usual, the hallways were buzzing with the energy of students rushing between classes. The chatter of friends, the sound of lockers slamming shut, and the echo of shoes against the tile floor filled the air. Mr. Thompson, a middle-aged English teacher who had spent years in this very school, walked through the hallways with a cup of lukewarm coffee in his hand, trying to wake up from his routine stupor. He wasn't prepared for what he was about to hear. Passing the language arts wing of the school, Mr. Thompson paused, his footsteps slowing as he noticed a soft, melodic voice drifting out from an open classroom door. He stopped just outside, peering in through the crack of the door, wondering who the source of this voice might be. What caught his attention wasn't just the sound, but the rhythm of it. An effortless flow of words that shifted from one language to the next. We, je pense que tu devrais, non, c'est mieux si tu le fais comme ça, a voice said, speaking in French, fluid and natural. Mr. Thompson furrowed his brow, slightly puzzled. As an English teacher, he was no stranger to foreign languages, but this? This sounded different. It wasn't the stilted, textbook language that was often spoken in class. This was fluent. Then, the voice switched. Se você tentar assim, será muito mais fácil, it said, now in Portuguese, seamlessly continuing. His curiosity piqued, Mr. Thompson took a few more steps closer to the door, careful not to disturb whoever was speaking. He heard a few more words, this time in what he recognized as Swahili. As each sentence switched languages, his heart started to race. Was this a joke? Was someone doing this for attention? He pushed the door open a bit further, just enough to peer inside. There, sitting at a desk in the corner of the room, was Ava Johnson, one of his students from English class. Her back was to him, and she was speaking with 3 exchange students who sat at desks in front of her. The students looked confused, listening intently as Ava guided them through their assignments. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened. He could tell that Ava was effortlessly switching between languages, each one more natural than the last. Spanish, Italian, Swahili, Portuguese. His mind raced. How was she doing this? How had he never noticed? Ava, quiet as she was in class, had always been a bit of an enigma to him. She sat in the 3rd row of his class, barely making eye contact with him or anyone else. She always turned in her homework on time, her essays thoughtful but never something that stood out as extraordinary. She wasn't the class clown or the golden student who was constantly praised. Ava was just Ava, silent, reserved, and almost invisible in the vast sea of Briarwood High. Yet here she was, the girl who never seemed to ask for attention, captivating an entire room with her gift for languages. Mr. Thompson leaned against the doorframe, his mouth slightly agape as he tried to absorb what he was witnessing. He had been a teacher for over 20 years, and in that time, he had seen all sorts of students, brilliant ones, struggling ones, and everything in between, but none like this. This was something else entirely. Ava, he finally called, his voice gentle but laced with awe. The girl froze, her voice cutting off mid-sentence. She turned around slowly, her eyes wide with sudden alarm, as though she had been caught doing something wrong. Her face flushed with a deep red hue. Mr. Thompson smiled warmly to ease her anxiety. Was that 9 different languages I just heard you speak? Ava's gaze dropped to the floor as she nervously fidgeted with the sleeve of her hoodie. I was just helping them with the assignment, she stammered. They had some questions, and I thought it might be easier if I explained it in their languages. He nodded slowly, still processing what he had just heard. I know, he said, his voice calm, but I don't think you realize what you just did. Ava, that was incredible. Ava shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She wasn't used to receiving compliments, especially not for something like this. She had always kept her talents hidden, tucked away in the corners of her world. To her, languages weren't something special. They were just tools she used to communicate, to understand the world around her better. But it seemed Mr. Thompson saw something more. I just like learning languages, she mumbled, not meeting his gaze. You like it? Mr. Thompson asked, his eyebrows raised in disbelief. Ava, you're speaking 9 languages. Most adults can barely manage 2 or 3. That's... Please, it's nothing, she cut in quickly, as though trying to downplay the situation. It's just... I started learning Spanish when I was 7. My mom used to work at the diner, and the customers would always speak Spanish, and I didn't want her to feel left out, so I learned to help. Mr. Thompson nodded, understanding now. Ava had never told him this before. He'd never realized how much of a self-starter she was, how determined she must have been to take on something so monumental at such a young age. But it wasn't just Spanish she spoke. There was more, so much more. And then I just kept going, she added quietly, her voice trailing off. I picked up Italian, then French, then, well, you know how it goes. It just feels natural. Natural? Mr. Thompson echoed, still in awe. Ava, that's amazing. I can't believe no one knows about this. You could go so far with a talent like that. Ava shrugged, her discomfort palpable. People don't usually pay attention to someone like me. And I don't really want them to. Mr. Thompson studied her closely. He could see the way she withdrew from the spotlight, how she didn't want to be seen for what she was, something extraordinary. It wasn't just that she was modest, it was as though she had spent so much of her life being overlooked that she had learned to hide her abilities. Ava, he said softly, his voice firm but caring, you have something special here. You shouldn't hide it. There are people out there who would be amazed by this. You could do so much with this gift. Have you ever thought about? I don't know, applying for scholarships? College? Programs? You could change the world with this. She blinked, clearly taken aback by the suggestion. I don't know. We can't afford college applications. I don't think anyone would even notice. You'd be surprised, he said, his voice full of conviction. I think you deserve a chance. And I'm going to help you get it. Ava shook her head, unable to fully comprehend what he was saying. I can't. I can't do that. But Mr. Thompson knew something she didn't. She could. And he wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. Not when he knew that somewhere out there, someone was waiting to hear her story. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the next class, Ava quickly gathered her things and slipped out of the room, her face still flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Thompson stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd of students, his mind racing with the possibilities. He knew one thing for sure, Ava Johnson was going to change the world. And it all started right here, right now. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Ava didn't return to class the next day with the same energy she'd left with. In fact, she hardly returned at all. It was the end of the second period when Mr. Thompson found a note on his desk during lunch, written hastily in Ava's scrawl, I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to know. Please don't say anything. I can't do this. Her handwriting wasn't typically this erratic. Ava had always been neat and precise. Something was off. He looked at the clock on the wall and let out a long breath. He had tried to convince himself that he could make it through the day without worrying about it, but he knew that wasn't going to happen. It wasn't in his nature to leave things unfinished. And Ava. Ava was far from ordinary. She needed to be told that. At the end of the day, Mr. Thompson found himself walking through the crowded halls, hoping that Ava was still hanging around somewhere. His mind raced as he thought of what he could say to change her mind. He didn't want to pressure her, but he could sense that there was more to her than she let on. A whole world of potential was just waiting for the right person to notice. He passed the lockers, navigating through clusters of students chatting, laughing, shoving each other in playful, high school ways. And then he saw her. Ava was standing by the back door, looking out at the courtyard, her backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked small, isolated. A stark contrast to the confident, capable girl he had seen earlier, speaking in fluent languages, effortlessly bridging the gap between cultures. Now, she seemed to be just another student, hiding in plain sight. Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment before walking toward her, his footsteps slow and purposeful. He didn't want to startle her, but he couldn't let her slip away. Not when she had the power to make something of herself. "Ava," he called softly, making her turn around. She flinched, just slightly, and then looked up at him. Her expression was a mix of surprise and dread, as though she had been caught doing something wrong. Her eyes quickly shifted away from his gaze. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," Mr. Thompson said, his voice calm. "But I can't let this go, Ava. Not when I know you have the potential to change everything." Her hands tightened around the straps of her backpack, but she didn't say anything. "You're talented, Ava. That's not something you can hide," he continued. "You have a gift, something most people can't even dream of. And I'm telling you right now, you can't keep running from it." Ava took a step back, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "You don't understand. I've spent my whole life trying to be invisible. I don't want anyone to notice me." "Why?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice gentle, though tinged with confusion. "Why wouldn't you want to be noticed for something so amazing? You have the ability to change the way people think about the world. To open doors for others who might never have the chance to learn what you know." Ava bit her lip, looking out the window again, as if she were searching for an answer somewhere beyond the glass. "It's not like that. People don't understand. They'll think I'm weird or different. And then I'll just be another freak. I'm just a girl from a small town. No one cares about me." Mr. Thompson paused. He could hear the quiet desperation in her voice, the fear of rejection that she had carried with her for so long. He had seen it before, students who had so much to offer, but were too afraid of what others would think. He knew how hard it could be to push past the walls people built around themselves, but he also knew that sometimes, those walls needed to be knocked down. Ava needed to know she was worth the fight. "You don't get it," Ava continued, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "I don't belong here. In this school. In this world. I'm just trying to survive. To get by." Mr. Thompson stepped closer, his heart aching for her. "Ava, you do belong. You belong in this world more than anyone I've ever met. You have something most people don't even know exists, and you're wasting it by trying to hide." Her eyes locked with his, and for the first time, Mr. Thompson saw something in her eyes that had been missing before. Vulnerability. Hope. But most of all, he saw the fear that had been holding her back. He knew what he had to say next. "Listen, I don't expect you to take this all in right now. But I'm telling you, there's a whole world of people out there who will see what I see. You have an opportunity here, Ava. Don't let it slip away because of fear. I'm not asking you to change overnight, but at least let me help you find a way to share what you have." Ava didn't answer right away. She stood there in silence, her eyes searching Mr. Thompson's face, as if trying to decipher his words. The tension hung in the air like a fragile thread between them. Finally, she spoke, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. "But what if they don't care? What if no one notices me?" He shook his head. "They will. People will notice. I'll make sure of it." Ava took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. She seemed to consider his words for a long time before finally nodding, just a little. "Okay," she said, her voice hesitant but earnest. "I'll think about it." Mr. Thompson smiled, feeling a weight lift from his chest. That's all I ask. For the first time that day, he felt hope. As he walked back down the hall, the words she had said still lingered in his mind. What if they don't care? The question echoed through his thoughts, louder than anything she had said before. Ava Johnson, the girl who spoke 9 languages, was terrified of being noticed. She was terrified of being vulnerable. It was a fear that had held her back for years, and now, it was up to him to help her break free. Mr. Thompson didn't know exactly what the next steps would be. But one thing was for sure, he wasn't going to let Ava go unnoticed any longer. Ava's mind raced as she walked home that afternoon, her backpack heavy with books but her thoughts even heavier. The encounter with Mr. Thompson still lingered in her mind like a haunting melody that wouldn't leave her. He had said she had a gift. A real gift. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to accept that. She'd spent her entire life blending in, keeping her talents tucked away like precious, fragile things that couldn't handle the harsh glare of light. She turned the corner onto her street, the familiar sights of her neighborhood surrounding her. The row of brick houses, the rusted fence that divided yards, and the fading neighborhood sign that had seen better days. Nothing had ever really changed here. And to Ava, that was the point. She liked it that way. She liked being a part of the background, unremarkable. It was safe. It was predictable. She could go unnoticed and, in her mind, that was exactly how she wanted it. As she approached her house, she saw her mom sitting on the front steps, staring out at the street with a vacant expression. Her mom had been distant lately, like she was somewhere else mentally. Ava didn't mind, though. Her mom had always been the silent type, the kind who didn't talk much, but showed love in small, quiet ways. A cup of soup on a cold day. A warm blanket on a late night. Ava had learned not to expect big gestures or words, but rather the quiet presence that said everything without saying anything at all. "Hey, Mom," Ava greeted, her voice quiet, hesitant. Her mom looked up, blinking as if coming out of a trance. "Oh, hey, Ava. How was school?" Ava shrugged, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Same as usual," she replied, though her mind was still preoccupied with Mr. Thompson's words. "Just, school." Her mom nodded and didn't press any further, a small smile crossing her face. "Well, that's good, I suppose." Ava sat down beside her, both of them quiet for a few moments as the sounds of distant traffic and birds filled the air. Her mom had always been good at letting silence settle between them, but tonight, Ava couldn't ignore the weight on her shoulders. Mr. Thompson's words kept echoing in her mind. She tried to block them out, but they wouldn't go away. She could feel her heart beat faster every time she thought about the potential of what he'd said. "Ava, you have something special. Don't hide it." "I was thinking about something," Ava finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice felt fragile, unsure. She turned to her mom, who was still gazing out at the street. "You remember how I've always been interested in languages? How I've been learning them since I was little?" Her mom turned her head to face her, her eyes softening. "Of course I remember. You've always had a way with words." Ava let out a small sigh. "Well, today, something happened at school. Mr. Thompson, he's my English teacher, he heard me talking in different languages. And he said I should think about applying for scholarships. That maybe I could go to college for it." Her mom raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised but not dismissive. "Scholarships? For languages? Ava, that's crazy." Ava finished for her, unable to hide the bitterness in her voice. "Yeah, I thought so too." Her mom was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing her response. Finally, she placed her hand gently on Ava's, her touch warm and steady. "Sweetheart, I don't know much about this kind of thing, but you've always had a knack for languages. It might not be crazy. It might be the chance you've been waiting for." Ava's eyes widened. "You really think so?" Her mom smiled softly. You've always been good at understanding people, Ava. You've always found a way to connect, even when others couldn't. It's not crazy. It's just you. Ava wasn't sure what to make of her mom's words. Part of her wanted to believe them, but another part was terrified of putting herself out there, of becoming something that could be rejected, something that could fall apart. The idea of pursuing a scholarship for languages felt like too much, like a mountain too steep to climb. She had kept her head down for so long. Why would anyone want to give her a chance now? As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and purple, Ava sat in silence next to her mom. She felt the weight of the world in her chest but also a flicker of hope. Could this really be her chance? Could she really do something more with her life? Or would she remain stuck in this quiet, invisible world forever? The next morning, she found herself sitting at her desk in the classroom, still unsure of what to do. Mr. Thompson had given her a packet of information about a language scholarship program, a prestigious one that offered full tuition to students who demonstrated exceptional language skills. She'd heard about it before, but it always seemed out of reach, like something only students at fancy private schools could dream of. But now it was sitting in front of her, a tangible reminder of everything she had worked for and everything she feared. The bell rang, signaling the start of class, and Ava sat quietly at her desk, staring down at the scholarship information in her hands. She felt a sudden wave of anxiety wash over her. What if I'm not good enough? What if they laugh at me? What if I don't even get past the first round? She could hear Mr. Thompson's voice in her mind, encouraging her, "You have something special, Ava. Don't hide it." But it was hard. It was hard to trust in herself when she had spent years believing that being ordinary was the safest way to survive. Mr. Thompson entered the classroom and paused for a moment as he scanned the room. His eyes briefly met Ava's, and for the first time, she saw a quiet determination in them. He wasn't going to let her slip through the cracks. He believed in her. And for some reason, that meant more than anything else. "All right, class, Mr. Thompson said as he set down his papers on the desk, "Today we're going to discuss a piece of classic literature, but before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to remind you all of a unique opportunity. If you're interested in languages or want to pursue linguistics, I'd like to encourage you to look into a scholarship program I mentioned yesterday. I think some of you might have the potential to go far with it." Ava's heart skipped a beat. Her hand trembled slightly as she clutched the scholarship packet in her lap, unsure of whether or not she should even consider it. But in that moment, she couldn't ignore the pull to see what it might mean for her future. She knew Mr. Thompson was right. She couldn't stay invisible forever. But was she ready to step into the light? The days after Mr. Thompson's offer to apply for the language scholarship felt like they dragged on forever. Ava couldn't escape the tension inside her, the quiet hum of anxiety that buzzed just beneath her skin. Every moment she spent in class, she kept the scholarship packet hidden at the bottom of her backpack, as if it were a ticking time bomb. She couldn't stop thinking about it, but at the same time, she didn't know what to do with it. Every night, she would sit at her desk, staring at the packet, and then retreat back into the comfortable rhythm of her routine. Homework, dinner, helping her mom with the house, anything to avoid thinking about the scholarship. Anything to avoid confronting the idea that maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than the invisible life she'd been living. But deep down, Ava knew she couldn't keep running forever. The thought of applying for the scholarship terrified her. She had always been a quiet observer, standing on the edges of conversations, listening, but never quite joining in. In the safe spaces of her mind, she could speak in 9 languages, express herself effortlessly, and navigate cultures with ease. But in the real world, the idea of being seen, really seen, made her feel exposed. Vulnerable. Like a target. Her mom could sense something was different in her. Over the past few days, she'd watched Ava with a quiet curiosity, as if she were waiting for something to break. And it did, that afternoon, when Ava came home from school, slamming the front door behind her with more force than she intended. Ava?" Her mom called from the kitchen, her voice soft but laced with concern. Ava didn't answer at first. She stood at the foot of the stairs, staring at the familiar walls of the house, the ones that had never really changed. For years, she had lived in the comfort of predictability. The thought of venturing beyond that felt like stepping into a vast, unknown ocean. Finally, she turned toward the kitchen, where her mom was sitting at the table, her eyes kind and expectant. "Mom," Ava began, her voice shaky. "I don't know what to do. Mr. Thompson wants me to apply for a scholarship. A real one. 4 languages." Her mom set down the cup of tea she had been holding and gestured for Ava to sit beside her. "What's stopping you?" "I don't know if I'm ready," Ava admitted. She felt a lump in her throat, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to acknowledge the depth of her fear. "What if I'm not good enough? What if they laugh at me? What if they think I'm a fraud?" Her mom looked at her, her gaze steady and calm. "Ava, listen to me." She reached out and took her daughter's hand in hers. "You've never been a fraud. You've always been real. Maybe you don't see it yet, but you have a gift. A talent that most people could only dream of. And I know you've been hiding it because you're afraid of what might happen if people see the real you. But sweetheart, the only thing that can hold you back is your own fear." Ava pulled her hand away and looked down at the floor, not ready to meet her mom's eyes. "I don't know how to be anything other than invisible. I don't know how to be something more." Her mom's voice softened, and she placed her hand gently on Ava's shoulder. "I know. But that's the thing, Ava. You don't have to change who you are. You just have to stop hiding. Stop pretending you don't have something that the world needs. You've always been afraid of standing out, but what if standing out is exactly what's going to make a difference?" Ava took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of thoughts swirling in her head. "I don't know if I can do this." Her mom smiled gently, as if she had seen this moment coming a long time ago. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be here every step of the way. But you have to decide. Are you going to keep hiding, or are you going to step into the light?" Ava stared at her mom for a long time, the weight of her words sinking in. She had always known her mom loved her, but it was moments like these, when her mom said just what she needed to hear, that made Ava feel understood. For once, Ava didn't feel like she had to figure everything out on her own. She had someone in her corner. The next day, after another restless night of tossing and turning, Ava woke up to the sound of her mom humming softly in the kitchen. She could feel it. Today was the day she had to make a choice. Today was the day she had to decide whether she would continue living in the shadows or step into the unknown. When she got to school, she made a beeline for Mr. Thompson's classroom before first period started. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart raced, but she knew she had to talk to him. She couldn't keep putting it off. Mr. Thompson was at his desk, flipping through papers, but when he saw her standing in the doorway, he gave her a welcoming smile. "Ava, what's on your mind?" I think I want to apply," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes lit up, and he immediately set his papers down. "Really? That's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Ava nodded, her breath catching in her throat. "But I don't know if I'm ready. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me?" "Ava," Mr. Thompson said, standing up and walking toward her, his tone soft but firm. "You're not going to fail. You've already succeeded just by believing in yourself enough to take this step. You have the talent. Now you just have to show them what you've got. It's not about being perfect. It's about giving it your all. And that's enough." For a moment, Ava felt something shift inside her, like a weight lifting from her shoulders. Mr. Thompson wasn't asking her to be perfect. He wasn't even asking her to succeed. He was asking her to try. To step out of the shadows and into the light, even if it was just for a moment. And for the first time in her life, Ava felt ready. Ready to take that first step. Ready to be seen. "I'll do it," she said, her voice more confident than she had ever heard it before. Mr. Thompson grinned, a genuine, proud smile. "I knew you could do it." As Ava walked back to her seat, a strange sense of calm washed over her. She had made her decision. She wasn't going to hide anymore. The world would see her for who she really was, whether they liked it or not. And if they didn't, well, that was their problem. She had too much to offer to stay hidden any longer. The days that followed her decision felt like a whirlwind to Ava. She had officially committed to applying for the scholarship, a momentous step she had never imagined she would take. But now that she had, everything felt surreal, as if the world around her had shifted, leaving her unsteady on her feet. She had started preparing the application with Mr. Thompson's help, working late into the evenings. It wasn't just about writing an essay, there were interviews, video submissions, and tests that she had to pass. Each task loomed over her like an insurmountable mountain, and the pressure felt heavier than ever. She had never been one to put herself out there like this before. She had always preferred to stay in the background, to let others shine. But now, she was expected to shine herself. The essay, which was the centerpiece of the application, had been especially daunting. Mr. Thompson had asked her to write about the power of language, how it connected people, transcended boundaries, and shaped cultures. It sounded simple enough, but as Ava sat at her desk, staring at the blank page, she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Who was she to speak on such a grand topic? The cursor blinked at her, waiting. And in that silence, Ava found herself lost in thought. She remembered the first time she had heard a foreign language. She had been 6 years old, sitting in the corner of a park as a group of tourists passed by, chattering in a language that sounded like music to her ears. It was a language she didn't understand, but she felt an instant connection to it. There was something magical about the way they spoke, how their words flowed and danced in the air. From that moment, Ava had made it her mission to understand as many languages as possible. It wasn't easy, of course. She spent hours with dictionaries, online courses, and language apps. But there was a part of her that thrived on the challenge. Each new word was like a piece of a puzzle, fitting together to create something beautiful and meaningful. The thought of that first spark of curiosity gave her the courage to begin. Ava began to type, the words coming slowly at first but gaining momentum as she found her rhythm. Language is not just a way of communication. It is a bridge, an invitation to connect with people from all walks of life. It is the thread that binds us together across time, distance, and culture. When I speak a language, I don't just speak words, I speak the history, the emotions, and the stories that have shaped that language. Ava paused, rereading what she had written. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was all she needed. She took a deep breath and hit submit. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long while, Ava felt proud of herself. That evening, as Ava sat down for dinner with her mom, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. It wasn't just the application, it was the way she saw herself now. She was no longer the quiet girl who blended into the background. She was someone who had taken a leap, who had put herself out there. And that felt empowering. "How's the application going?" her mom asked as she placed a plate of spaghetti in front of her. Ava smiled softly, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I submitted it." Her mom's eyes widened with pride. "You did? Oh, Ava, that's amazing. How do you feel?" "Scared," Ava admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But also, proud. For the first time, I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Her mom's smile softened, and she reached over to squeeze Ava's hand. "You've always mattered, sweetheart. But now, you're starting to see it too." Ava felt a rush of gratitude toward her mom. She had always been her quiet support, always there with a gentle word of encouragement when Ava needed it most. But tonight, it felt like something had shifted between them. Ava wasn't just her daughter anymore. She was someone who had taken a step towards something bigger. After dinner, Ava retreated to her room, where she spent the rest of the evening working on the next part of the application, the video submission. This would be the hardest part. She would have to speak directly to the panel, to tell them why she deserved the scholarship and what language meant to her. The thought of speaking on camera made her stomach churn. She had always hated being the center of attention. And now, she had to speak about her passion in front of people she didn't even know. Ava set up her phone on a tripod and took a deep breath, staring at her reflection in the screen. Her hair was messy, her face pale from the stress, but she knew she couldn't back out now. She had already made the decision. She had already come this far. She cleared her throat and began speaking, her voice shaky at first, but then steadier as she spoke about her journey with language, how it had shaped her, how it had given her a sense of belonging, and how she believed it could help her connect with others on a deeper level. She spoke from the heart, and as she did, something inside her clicked. She wasn't just talking to the panel. She was talking to herself, reminding herself that she was worthy of this opportunity. When she finished, she played the video back and watched herself. She could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but there was something else too, a quiet strength. She wasn't perfect, but she was real. And for the first time, that felt enough. Ava hit submit once again, the last of the application sent off into the world. She leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding in her chest, and let out a long, shaky breath. The next few days felt like an eternity. Ava tried to focus on her schoolwork, but every moment seemed to drag on as she waited for a response. Mr. Thompson had given her encouragement, telling her that he believed in her, but she couldn't shake the doubt. What if they didn't like her video? What if she wasn't good enough? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she couldn't go back now. She had done everything she could. Then, one afternoon after school, a letter arrived. It was addressed to Ava, in neat, formal handwriting. Her hands shook as she tore it open, her eyes scanning the words. Dear Ava, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist for the scholarship. Congratulations. We were impressed with your application, particularly your heartfelt video and the passion you demonstrated for language. We would like to invite you to an interview to further discuss your application. Please let us know a convenient time for you. Best regards. The Scholarship Committee. Ava couldn't believe her eyes. She made it. She was a finalist. It was only the first step, but it was a step nonetheless. And for the first time in her life, Ava felt like her dream wasn't just a distant hope, it was becoming a reality. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the letter in her hands, her heart racing. It wasn't over yet, but she had made it this far. And that was enough to remind her, she was capable of more than she had ever realized. The day of the interview came faster than Ava had expected. It felt like only yesterday that she had submitted her application, and now she was standing on the precipice of something that could change her life forever. Her stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and fear. This wasn't just an interview, it was her chance to prove that she deserved the scholarship, that she was more than just a quiet girl in the back of the classroom. Ava had spent the last few days practicing her responses, rehearsing in front of the mirror, and going over everything she had written in her application. She even asked her mom to help, asking for advice on how to speak with confidence and grace. But no amount of preparation could ease the nervous energy bubbling inside her. She stood in front of her closet that morning, staring at the clothes hanging in front of her. She wanted to look professional, but she didn't want to appear too stiff or fake. She settled on a simple, but elegant, dress that made her feel comfortable. She ran a brush through her hair, trying to tame the wild curls that had a mind of their own. Her mom's words echoed in her head, "Just be yourself, Ava. You've got this." When she left the house that morning, her mom kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm so proud of you. No matter what happens today, you've already shown how strong you are." The drive to the interview location was quiet. Ava's mind raced, but the streets outside the window were calm and peaceful. She tried to focus on the sights around her, the trees lining the road, the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves. Anything to distract herself from the growing knot in her stomach. The building was tall, standing in the heart of the city like a beacon of opportunity. Ava's nerves only intensified as she stepped inside. The lobby was modern and sleek, with polished floors and glass walls that reflected the world outside. She was ushered into a waiting area, where she sat nervously, her legs bouncing under the table. Ava had always been the kind of person who observed, who blended in, but now she had to be noticed. She had to speak up. Her heart was pounding so loudly in her chest that she was afraid the whole room could hear it. She had spent her entire life avoiding being in the spotlight, and now here she was, about to step into it willingly. A few minutes later, a woman in her mid-30s walked in, wearing a sharp suit and a warm smile. Her name was Ms. Hamilton, and she extended a hand to Ava. "Hi, Ava. It's nice to meet you. I'm Ms. Hamilton, and I'll be conducting your interview today." Ava shook her hand, her palm sweaty, but she managed to smile. "It's nice to meet you too. Please, take a seat, Ms. Hamilton said, motioning to the chair across from her. "I know you've been through quite the process to get here, so I just want to make sure you're comfortable. We're not looking for perfect answers, just an honest conversation." Ava nodded and sat down, trying to steady her breath. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint tapping of a keyboard from another room. Ms. Hamilton leaned forward slightly. "So, Ava, tell me a little about yourself. What inspired you to apply for this scholarship?" Ava had practiced this part of the interview 1,000 times in her mind, but now that the moment was here, the words felt like they were stuck in her throat. She took a deep breath and forced herself to speak. "I've always loved languages," she began, her voice quieter than she intended. "I remember the first time I heard a foreign language when I was a little kid, and it just felt different. It felt like a doorway to another world. So I started learning, and it became a part of who I am. I don't just speak languages, I live them. They help me understand different cultures, different people. They've given me a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose." Ava paused, feeling the weight of her words. She wasn't sure if they were coming out right, but it didn't matter. This was her truth. This was why she was here. Ms. Hamilton nodded, her eyes softening as she listened. "That's incredible, Ava. And I can tell from your application that you've put a lot of thought and effort into learning those languages. How do you think this scholarship will help you in your future?" Ava hesitated for a moment, but then the words came more easily. "I've always wanted to help people, to make a difference. I think language is one of the best ways to do that. It can bring people together, break down barriers, and open doors to opportunities. I want to use my skills to help others, to teach, to connect. I know this scholarship will give me the chance to expand my knowledge, but it will also give me the chance to make a real impact on the world." There was a silence as Ms. Hamilton let her words sink in. Ava could feel the weight of the moment, like everything she had worked for was riding on this conversation. "You've got a very strong passion for language, Ava," Ms. Hamilton said thoughtfully. "I can see that. But I want to ask you something a little different. You've mentioned the importance of language in connecting people, but can you think of a time when language helped you personally connect with someone in a meaningful way?" Ava's heart skipped a beat. The question wasn't something she had anticipated, but it struck her deeply. She thought for a moment, then the memory surfaced. "There was a time in middle school," she began, "when I met a student who had just moved to our school from another country. She didn't speak much English, and she was really shy. I knew a little bit of her language, so I started talking to her in it. At first, she looked surprised, but then she smiled, and we started talking more. It was like a bridge formed between us, and even though we didn't have much in common, we could communicate through language. It made her feel less alone, and it made me realize just how powerful words can be. They can change how someone feels, even if it's just for a moment. Ms. Hamilton smiled, her eyes glistening slightly. That's a beautiful story, Ava. It's clear that you understand the deeper power of language. You're not just learning it for the sake of learning, it's about connection, and that's something we really value here. Ava felt a rush of relief. The interview was going better than she had expected. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just playing a part, she was being herself. She was sharing her truth, and it was enough. Ms. Hamilton glanced down at her notes and then looked back up at Ava. Well, Ava, I think that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. You've really made an impression. Ava's heart leapt in her chest. She had done it. She had faced her fear and spoken with honesty, and now she just had to wait for the decision. Thank you, Ava said, her voice trembling slightly. I really appreciate this opportunity. Ms. Hamilton stood and extended her hand again. We'll be in touch soon, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, you've already done something remarkable by being here today. Ava shook her hand, a sense of pride swelling inside her. She had walked into that room unsure of herself, but now, as she stepped back into the hallway, she felt different. She had taken the first step towards something bigger than herself. Now, she just had to wait. The days following the interview felt like they stretched on forever. Each one was a blur of school, home, and the waiting, always the waiting. Ava couldn't stop thinking about the interview, replaying every word, every glance, every hesitation. She kept asking herself if she had said the right things, if she had come across as confident enough, or if her passion for languages had been clear. There was no way to know, no way to change anything now. All she could do was wait. She tried to push the scholarship out of her mind, focusing on the usual distractions, homework, hanging out with her mom, and her small group of friends. But even then, it was impossible not to feel the weight of the uncertainty pressing down on her. Ava's mom had been her constant source of support. Every evening, as they sat down for dinner, her mom would ask how she was feeling. Each time, Ava would put on a brave face, saying she was fine, even though deep down, she was riddled with doubt. Still no news. Her mom asked one night after dinner, as they cleaned up the dishes together. Ava shook her head, the weight of the moment settling on her chest. No, not yet. I know it's hard, her mom said gently, but sometimes the waiting is the hardest part. You've done everything you could, Ava. Now, you just have to trust that it's enough. Ava nodded, trying to convince herself that it was true. She had done everything she could. But it was hard to trust that when the future felt so out of her control. As the days dragged on, Ava found herself retreating into her old routine, reading, writing, and losing herself in the languages she had studied. It was almost like a coping mechanism. When things felt uncertain, when the world seemed to be on pause, she would dive into the world of words, where she could control the narrative, where she could feel sure of herself. One afternoon, after school, she found herself sitting at her desk, the window open just enough to let in the cool breeze. She had her textbook spread out in front of her, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She grabbed her notebook, a habit she'd picked up years ago, and began to write. The words came slowly at first, but then they flowed as if they had been waiting to be released. She wrote about the uncertainty she was feeling, about the waiting, the endless anticipation that was gnawing at her every day. She wrote about the fear of not being good enough, of the scholarship being a dream that might slip away. But as she wrote, she also found herself writing about her hope, the hope that no matter what, she was on the right path. The path that had led her here, to this moment, to this decision to chase something bigger than herself. Her hand paused over the notebook. Maybe that's what this waiting was all about, she thought. It was teaching her patience. It was teaching her to trust that even when things were out of her control, there was a bigger plan at play. She glanced at her phone, checking the time. It was late, and her mom had probably already started making dinner. As she stood up to put her things away, the familiar sound of her phone buzzing stopped her in her tracks. A message from Mr. Thompson. "Hey Ava, just checking in. I know you must be nervous, but I want you to remember something. No matter the outcome, you've already achieved something remarkable by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. You're growing in ways that are hard to see right now, but trust me, it's all leading somewhere good. I'm proud of you. Stay strong." Ava stared at the message for a long time, feeling a wave of warmth and gratitude. Mr. Thompson's words had always been a grounding force for her, especially when she started doubting herself. She had learned so much from him, not just about academics, but about life. About having the courage to go after what you wanted, even if it scared you. The message was a reminder that no matter what happened with the scholarship, she had already grown. She had already taken the leap. And that in itself was something to be proud of. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from her email. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be it? She clicked on the notification, holding her breath as she waited for the page to load. The subject line read, "Finalist decision, Ava Williams." With shaking hands, she opened the email. "Dear Ava, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as the recipient of the Global Language Excellence Scholarship. Congratulations. After reviewing your application, your interview, and your video submission, we are confident that you will be a perfect fit for this scholarship and for the goals we aim to support. Your hard work, passion, and dedication to the study of languages impressed us greatly. We are excited to offer you this opportunity to continue your studies and to support your academic journey. Please find the attached details on the next steps, including the orientation program and scholarship package. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Best regards. The Scholarship Committee." Ava blinked. She read the email again, just to make sure she hadn't imagined it. The words were the same. "You have been selected as the recipient." Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a rush of adrenaline flood through her veins. She couldn't breathe for a moment, the world spinning around her. This was real. She had done it. She had won the scholarship. Tears welled up in her eyes as she gripped the phone tighter, almost afraid to let go of the moment. She had made it. She was going to be able to pursue her dreams, to learn more languages, to help others. All the hard work, all the doubts, all the waiting, it had all led to this. She rushed downstairs, unable to contain her excitement. Her mom was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. "Mom!" Ava shouted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I got it." Her mom turned around, eyes wide with disbelief, and before Ava could say another word, her mom pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it, baby. I knew you would. I'm so proud of you." Ava's eyes filled with tears as she clung to her mom. This was everything she had hoped for, and more. The waiting was over. The journey was just beginning. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind of change for Ava. She had barely gotten used to the idea that she was a scholarship recipient when the reality of it all began to sink in. There were emails to read, forms to sign, and orientations to attend. Every step she took felt like a leap into the unknown, and even though she had dreamed of this moment, it was overwhelming in ways she hadn't anticipated. Ava sat at her desk one afternoon, staring at the pile of paperwork in front of her. There were scholarships to claim, housing arrangements to finalize, and classes to schedule. She had never been so aware of how much her life was about to change. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Thompson, the teacher who had been her mentor and biggest cheerleader. "Hey Ava. I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling. The scholarship is amazing, and I'm sure you're already making big plans for your future. If you ever need to talk or just want advice, you know where to find me. You've earned this, and I couldn't be prouder of you." Ava smiled, feeling a warm sense of reassurance wash over her. She had always been the type to keep to herself, unsure of reaching out for help. But Mr. Thompson's support had always been unwavering, and it was comforting to know that she had someone in her corner, even as she took this next step. Her mom had been just as excited as she was, but Ava could tell that there was a certain sadness in her eyes whenever they talked about the scholarship. It was a bittersweet feeling. On one hand, Ava was going to fulfill her dreams and achieve something she had worked so hard for. On the other hand, it meant that she was going to be leaving home, leaving the small, familiar world she had known for so long. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" Ava asked her mom one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset together. "I know it's a lot. I mean, I'm leaving, and I don't want to make things harder for you." Her mom put a hand on her shoulder, smiling gently. "Ava, you're going to do amazing things. I'm proud of you for chasing your dreams. Yes, it's going to be different not having you around all the time, but I know this is what you need. I want you to grow, to have the opportunities you deserve. Just promise me that you'll always stay connected. You're not going anywhere that far." Ava nodded, trying to hold back the lump in her throat. "I will, Mom. I promise." But even with her mom's words of encouragement, Ava couldn't help but feel the weight of leaving. Her friends had been supportive, too, but there were moments when she found herself feeling unsure. Could she really do this? Could she really leave everything she knew behind and step into this new life? The first official day of orientation finally arrived, and Ava was filled with a mix of nerves and excitement. She had been placed in a dormitory, shared with other students who were also part of the scholarship program. It was a huge campus, buzzing with activity, and it felt like she had entered a different world altogether. As she walked through the halls of the university, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't quite belong. There were so many new faces, all of them confident and comfortable in their surroundings. And here she was, a girl from a small town, suddenly thrust into a world she had only ever dreamed of. She had always been good at languages, but now, she was about to dive into a world where that skill was no longer unique. Everyone around her was brilliant, driven, and determined. How would she fit in? She was led into a large auditorium for the opening ceremony, where she found a seat near the back. The room was filled with students from all over the world, each with their own stories and dreams. As the dean stepped onto the stage and began to speak, Ava felt a quiet sense of awe wash over her. This was it. This was the place where her dreams were going to unfold. "This program is designed to push you to your limits," the dean said, her voice echoing through the auditorium. "We expect you to not only excel academically but to grow as individuals. The world is waiting for you to make a difference." Ava listened intently, absorbing every word. She knew the next few years were going to be challenging. But this was exactly where she needed to be. After the ceremony, students were grouped according to their areas of study. Ava found herself with a small group of other language students, most of whom were from different parts of the world. They spoke in different accents, and their words sounded different from what she was used to, but somehow, it felt right. She was introduced to a few of the other students, including a girl named Sofia from Spain and a boy named Luca from Italy. They were kind, welcoming, and seemed eager to learn from each other. Ava found herself laughing, feeling like maybe she wasn't so out of place after all. "So, Ava," Sofia asked, "what languages do you speak?" Ava smiled shyly. "I speak English, of course, but I've studied Spanish, French, Italian, and a bit of German. I'm really passionate about learning as many languages as I can." "Wow, that's amazing!" Luca exclaimed. "I only speak Italian and a little bit of English." Ava laughed, feeling a sense of camaraderie with the group. "I guess I've got a bit of a head start, but I'm hoping to pick up more while I'm here." They chatted for a while, exchanging stories and talking about their respective countries. Ava had never felt so connected to people from different cultures before. It was like the world was opening up to her, and she was finally a part of something bigger than herself. As the day went on, Ava started to feel more at ease. The nerves that had gripped her earlier were beginning to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. She realized that while she might be new to this world, she had something unique to offer, her passion for languages and the way they connected people. It wasn't just about learning to speak, it was about learning to understand. That night, as she sat in her new dorm room, surrounded by the unfamiliar hum of campus life, Ava reflected on how far she had come. Only a few months ago, she had been unsure of herself, wondering if she even deserved to be here. Now, she was starting to see that this scholarship wasn't just a chance to study languages, it was a chance to discover who she truly was. She pulled out her journal and wrote a few lines before bed. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. This is just the beginning. The days at the university passed in a blur of excitement and adjustment. Every day felt like a new adventure as Ava immersed herself in the language program, meeting students from all over the world, attending lectures, and participating in group discussions. But as much as she was thrilled to be there, she couldn't ignore the feeling that she was still finding her footing. This was a new world, and she had to learn how to navigate it. Her classes were intense, pushing her to not only improve her language skills but also to understand the cultures behind them. Ava had always loved learning languages, but she was beginning to realize that they were more than just a way to communicate, they were the key to understanding people's histories, their struggles, and their triumphs. One afternoon, as she sat in a cafe on campus, she found herself deep in conversation with Sophia and Luca. The three of them had become fast friends, bonded by their shared love of languages and their curiosity about the world. They were discussing their different experiences growing up in their respective countries, each of them offering insights into their unique cultural perspectives. So, Ava, Sophia began, you're from the United States, right? What's it like there? I've heard so much about it, but I've never been. Ava took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. It's hard to explain, she said. It's a huge country with so many different cultures and people. There are parts of it that feel like they belong to different worlds, even though they're all under the same flag. In some places, it's all about ambition and individualism, and in others, it's more about community and family. Luca nodded thoughtfully. I've always been fascinated by the idea of the American dream, he said. It's such a powerful concept, but also so different from how we view success in Italy. Here, it's about hard work, but in Italy, we tend to think more about family connections and taking our time. Everything moves a little slower. Ava smiled, appreciating how each of them viewed the world differently. I think that's the beauty of learning languages, she said. It's not just about mastering grammar and vocabulary. It's about understanding the people behind the words, the culture, the values that shape the way they speak. Sophia's eyes sparkled. Exactly. When we learn a new language, we're not just learning to communicate. We're learning how to connect with people on a deeper level. It's like we're building bridges between our worlds. Ava nodded, feeling a surge of excitement. She had always known that languages were powerful, but hearing it articulated like that made her realize just how profound it truly was. She wasn't just studying languages to become fluent or to impress others. She was learning to connect with people in a way that transcended borders. Over the next few weeks, Ava threw herself into her studies with renewed energy. Her professors pushed her to think critically about the cultural implications of the languages she was learning, to consider how language shaped identity and perception. They introduced her to literature, history, and art from various countries, each one offering a glimpse into a different way of life. But it wasn't just her professors who taught her about culture, her classmates did too. Ava began to notice how the students from different countries brought their own unique perspectives into their conversations. In one of her seminars, they were discussing a French novel, and Ava was struck by how her classmate, Pierre from Paris, interpreted the book's themes of love and sacrifice so differently from Sophia's take on it. Pierre's perspective was grounded in the history of France's romantic traditions, while Sophia viewed the novel through the lens of her own Mediterranean background, which placed a stronger emphasis on family and loyalty. It was moments like this that made Ava realize just how much she could learn from others, how much she could grow by listening and understanding. Every conversation was a new opportunity to learn, to challenge her own assumptions, and to expand her worldview. One evening, after a long day of classes, Ava sat down with Luca in the library. They were both working on a language assignment, but their conversation kept drifting back to the topic of culture. Luca had been talking about the importance of food in Italian culture, how meals weren't just about eating, but about coming together, sharing stories, and bonding over time-honored recipes. "I love that about Italy," Ava said, smiling. "It's like food is the thread that ties everything together." "It is," Luca agreed, his eyes lighting up. "When we sit down for a meal, it's not just about the food. It's about the people around the table. It's about sharing something that's been passed down through generations." Ava thought about her own family dinners, where the focus was often on getting the food on the table and making sure everyone had enough to eat. She had never really thought about meals in the way Luca described, about them being an opportunity for connection, for storytelling. "I wish I could experience that," Ava said. "The idea of taking your time, enjoying the food, and being present with your family. It sounds so meaningful." "You will," Luca said, grinning. "You should come to Italy sometime. I'll take you to my family's home, and we'll cook together. You'll see what I mean." Ava laughed, the idea of traveling to Italy suddenly feeling real. She had always wanted to experience different cultures firsthand, and now, she could see how these experiences could help her become a better speaker, a better communicator, and a better person. The conversation shifted as Luca asked her about the United States. "Do you think people in America understand the importance of culture and language?" he asked. "I feel like everything there moves so fast. It's almost like people forget about their roots." Ava hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "I think there's definitely a lot of focus on efficiency and productivity. But I also think there's a growing awareness of the need for cultural understanding. It's not always easy, but more people are starting to realize how important it is to listen and understand each other." Luca nodded thoughtfully. "That's good to hear. Because, at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to connect, trying to understand one another." Ava smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She knew he was right. That was the power of language. It wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a bridge between hearts and minds, a way to break down barriers and build connections that transcended borders. As the semester continued, Ava became more and more immersed in this idea of cultural exchange. She wasn't just learning languages, she was learning about the human experience. Every conversation, every lesson, every encounter was an opportunity to grow, to become a part of something much bigger than herself. And as she sat in the library that evening, surrounded by books and the hum of her fellow students, she realized that this was just the beginning of her journey. She wasn't just studying languages anymore, she was building cultural bridges, one conversation at a time. The weeks were flying by faster than Ava had anticipated. What had started as a dream, a long-shot hope of being awarded the scholarship, had quickly become her reality. The excitement of being surrounded by so many brilliant minds, the joy of immersing herself in new languages, and the adrenaline of having an entire world of opportunity ahead of her had been intoxicating. But with all this newness came pressure she hadn't quite anticipated. Ava had always been the quiet, hard-working girl back home. The one who knew how to study, how to stay under the radar, and how to work her way through any challenge. But here, in this new world of academic excellence and high expectations, Ava felt a creeping sense of doubt. The first real test of her abilities came when her professor, Dr. Langston, assigned a major project for the class. It was a comprehensive analysis of the cultural and linguistic differences between the Romance languages, Spanish, Italian, French, and Portuguese. Ava had been excited at first, as it played right into her passion for understanding the roots and evolution of languages. But then came the weight of the task. The project wasn't just about writing a paper, it was an in-depth research assignment that required interviewing native speakers, analyzing historical texts, and presenting her findings in front of the entire class. Ava knew this was going to be the most challenging thing she had ever attempted, and as the deadline loomed closer, the pressure mounted. Remember, Dr. Langston had said with a smile during their first lecture on the project, this is not just about memorizing facts. It's about making connections. How do these languages reflect their people? How do they shape culture? What stories do they tell? The idea was exciting in theory, but the practicalities of it were overwhelming. Ava, who had always struggled with speaking in front of large groups, now found herself worried about presenting her work to her peers. She was used to studying in the background, working through assignments in solitude. But here, she had to stand up, defend her ideas, and articulate her thoughts in a way that others would understand and appreciate. What if I mess up? What if I forget everything I studied? Ava asked herself as she stared at the piles of research materials in front of her. The pressure was becoming unbearable. But as much as she wanted to retreat into her comfort zone, she knew she couldn't. Not this time. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let her fear hold her back. One evening, after dinner with Sophia and Luca, the three of them found themselves in the university's study lounge. It had become a sort of tradition for them to meet up after classes to go over their assignments, share their struggles, and support each other. Tonight, however, Ava wasn't sure she could muster the energy to focus on her project. The thought of presenting her research to the class made her stomach turn. I just don't think I can do it, she said, shaking her head as she buried her face in her hands. I'm not ready for something like this. What if I mess up? Sophia, who had been working on her own research about Spanish literature, paused and looked up. Ava, you've been working so hard. You're more than ready. You just have to believe in yourself. Luca, who had been reading through an Italian history book, chimed in. She's right. You've got the knowledge, and you know this topic inside and out. The only thing holding you back is your fear of speaking in front of others. But that's just something you need to push through. We all have fears, but we face them head-on. Ava looked at them, appreciating their encouragement but still feeling a knot in her chest. I don't know if I can. What if I freeze up? What if they think I'm not good enough? Luca leaned forward, a serious look on his face. Ava, the way you speak is powerful. You have something to say. It's not about being perfect, it's about sharing what you know and connecting with your audience. And trust me, they'll listen. Ava wasn't convinced, but their words had a way of making her feel a little more capable. She knew they were right. She had been speaking and learning languages her entire life. Why should she be afraid of speaking to a class of peers who were just as eager to learn as she was? They weren't there to judge her, they were there to learn from each other. Determined to take their advice to heart, Ava spent the next few days working tirelessly on her project. She spent hours combing through historical texts, interviewing native speakers through video calls, and piecing together her analysis of the cultural differences that shaped the Romance languages. She was getting better at finding the connections between language and culture, starting to see how the nuances of speech reflected deeper societal values and traditions. But the hardest part was still ahead, standing in front of the class and presenting her research. Ava's hands would sweat, her heart would race, and her mind would go blank just thinking about it. Finally, the day arrived. Ava sat in the classroom, watching as her classmates took their turns presenting. Each one seemed confident, poised, and articulate. They spoke with passion about their topics, and their ideas flowed effortlessly. By the time it was Ava's turn, her nerves had completely overtaken her. Her palms were clammy, her throat tight. Ava, are you ready? Dr. Langston's voice cut through the haze of Ava's panic. Ava nodded, though it felt more like a nervous twitch than anything else. She walked up to the front of the class, heart pounding in her chest, and set her notes down. The room felt enormous. All eyes were on her. Taking a deep breath, Ava began. She started with the historical context of the Romance languages, explaining their origins and how they had evolved over centuries. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she spoke, she felt herself starting to settle. The more she talked, the more she realized that she wasn't just reciting facts, she was telling a story. A story about how languages were intertwined with culture, history, and identity. With each passing minute, Ava's confidence grew. Her words began to flow more naturally. She felt her nerves start to fade as the presentation went on, and by the time she reached the conclusion, she had found her rhythm. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Ava looked up at Dr. Langston and her classmates, waiting for feedback. "Great job, Ava," Dr. Langston said with a smile. "You really brought the material to life. Your analysis was thorough, and your passion for the subject really showed. Well done." Ava's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She had faced her fear and come out on the other side stronger than before. The sense of relief that washed over her was unlike anything she had ever felt. It wasn't just about finishing the project, it was about realizing that she was capable of much more than she had ever given herself credit for. Later that day, as Ava sat in a cafe with Sophia and Luca, she couldn't help but smile. She had conquered the challenge. And while it hadn't been easy, it had shown her that fear was just a hurdle, not a roadblock. "You did great," Sophia said, grinning. "I knew you could do it." Luca raised his glass in a toast. To Ava, the girl who faced her fears and crushed it. Ava laughed, feeling the weight of the past few weeks finally lifting. "Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you." But more than that, Ava realized she had done it for herself. She had faced the challenge, and now, she was ready for whatever came next. The path ahead wasn't always going to be easy, but it was hers to walk. And that was the most empowering thing of all. Ava woke up early the next morning, the sunlight spilling through her dorm room window. Her heart still carried the sense of pride and relief from yesterday's presentation. It had been a hurdle, an enormous one, but she had made it to the other side. It wasn't just the project she had conquered, it was a bigger victory, one that gave her a newfound sense of confidence. She smiled as she sat up and stretched. The day ahead seemed full of promise, a contrast to the anxious nights leading up to the presentation. There was still much more to learn, to experience, but Ava had started to feel a deeper connection with the world around her. With her studies, with her friends, and, most importantly, with herself. As she walked across campus, a familiar face appeared in the distance. It was Marco, a student from Italy who had recently joined their group of language enthusiasts. He had a natural charisma, always full of energy and stories from his hometown. Ava had noticed that Marco was a bit of an outsider in the group, not for any lack of interest, but because he often found it difficult to keep up with the flow of their conversations. His English was functional, but not flawless, and at times he struggled to express himself fully. "Good morning, Ava." Marco greeted her, waving excitedly as he caught up to her. "Good morning, Marco." Ava smiled back. "How's it going?" Marco shrugged. Same old, same old. I'm starting to get a little frustrated with all the reading. I don't know why, but it feels like I understand everything, but then when I try to explain it, the words just don't come out right. Ava could relate to that feeling, how the words sometimes felt just beyond reach, like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. But this was Marco's first semester at the university, and she remembered feeling the same way when she first arrived. It took time, but it was worth it. I know exactly what you mean, Ava said, trying to reassure him. It happens to all of us. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Marco looked at her with a curious expression. But you don't have trouble with it. You speak so well. How did you get so good at it? Ava paused. She had been working hard on her language skills for years, but the way Marco asked the question made her realize that her own journey had been gradual, something that had shaped her over time. I guess it's just a lot of practice, she said, reflecting. When I was younger, I was really shy. But I found that when I started speaking, no matter how bad I was at it, it helped me get better. It wasn't about perfection, it was about communicating, connecting with others. It took time, but eventually, it clicked. Marco nodded, looking thoughtful. I think that's the part one struggle with, connecting with people. I want to make friends, but it feels like there's this barrier, and I don't know how to get through it. Ava felt a pang of empathy for him. She had seen Marco at lunch tables and in study sessions, trying to join in but often holding back, unsure of how to break through the language and cultural differences. She had felt that same way when she first arrived, uncertain and a little lost. I think a lot of it is about being open to others, even if you don't have all the words right, Ava said softly. Sometimes, it's more about listening and showing that you care. People can sense that, and that's what really builds a connection. Marco's face lit up, his eyes widening. Yeah. I think you're right. I've been so focused on trying to get everything perfect. But maybe I just need to take a step back and focus on the conversation, not the words. Ava smiled. Exactly. It's not about being flawless, it's about sharing something real, and people will appreciate that. The two walked in companionable silence for a moment, the autumn air crisp around them. As they neared the campus library, Ava saw Luca and Sophia sitting outside at their usual spot. The warm glow of sunlight bathed them in a golden hue, making it feel like the perfect moment to share a realization she had come to over the past few weeks. I've been thinking, Ava said, breaking the quiet. Languages are more than just tools. They're bridges. They allow us to cross into each other's worlds. But the real connection happens when we step into those worlds with open hearts and minds, ready to learn and understand. Marco looked at her, his expression softening as if he were seeing a new perspective unfold before him. I like that idea. It's not just about speaking a language, it's about connecting with people. Ava nodded. Exactly. And sometimes, the words don't matter as much as we think. What matters more is the feeling behind them. The intention to understand, to care, to be part of something bigger. As they reached the bench where Sophia and Luca were sitting, Ava felt a sense of belonging settle in her chest. This group of people, each with their own backgrounds, cultures, and languages, had become her family. In their shared experiences, they had built something deeper than just friendship, they had built understanding. And as she sat down beside them, she felt the warmth of that connection in a way she never had before. Sophia grinned as she saw them approach. There you are. We were just talking about you. How did the presentation go, Ava? Ava took a deep breath, smiling wide. It went great. I think I actually got the hang of it. And I learned something important along the way. Luca raised an eyebrow. Oh. What's that? Ava looked at Marco, who was now sitting across from her. That languages are just the beginning. It's the connections we make, the willingness to understand each other, that really matters. Sophia and Luca exchanged knowing looks. You're absolutely right, Sophia said softly. And you know what? I think you're starting to see it, the real power of language. Ava felt a rush of gratitude. She had come a long way in such a short time, not just in her academic journey, but in her personal growth as well. She wasn't just learning about languages anymore. She was learning about people, about their hearts, their stories, and the way language was the key to unlocking those things. As they sat there, chatting about their week, Ava realized that her time at the university was becoming more than just a means to an academic end. It was an opportunity for personal growth, for forging real, lasting connections that transcended borders and languages. And that realization filled her with excitement about the future. For the first time since arriving at the university, Ava felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't just a student from another country. She was part of a community bound together not just by language, but by a shared understanding of what it meant to connect with others. The journey ahead would still be full of challenges, but Ava knew now that she was ready to face them with the same open heart and mind that had brought her this far. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Ava's world was expanding in ways she hadn't imagined. The more she immersed herself in language, the more she began to see how each word, each phrase, carried the weight of history, culture, and experience. She could feel herself growing, not just as a student of languages but as a person. But despite all the progress, there was still so much to learn, so many uncharted waters. One afternoon, as Ava sat in the campus cafe with Sophia and Luca, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw an email from Dr. Langston. It was the kind of email that made her heart race. The subject line read, "Invitation to participate, language exchange program." "Hey, check this out," Ava said, showing her friends the email. "Dr. Langston wants me to join a new language exchange program." Sophia's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing. What's it about?" "It's a program where students from different cultural backgrounds are paired together to practice each other's languages," Ava explained, still reading through the details. "We're supposed to meet once a week, converse in both languages, and learn more about each other's cultures. It sounds like a great opportunity, but I don't know." Luca leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What's holding you back?" "It sounds like exactly the kind of thing you'd be great at." Ava hesitated. "I think it's the idea of stepping into a completely different cultural space. What if I don't understand the person's background, or worse, what if I make them feel uncomfortable?" Sophia smiled knowingly. "Ava, you've been learning about different cultures your whole life. You've got this. Plus, it's about being open to each other's differences. The whole point of the exchange is to learn from each other." Ava bit her lip. "I just don't want to mess it up. It's one thing to talk about culture in theory, but it's another to try and live it with someone else, especially if I'm the one initiating it." Luca laughed softly. "You're overthinking it. These kinds of programs aren't about getting everything right. They're about being genuine and willing to engage. Besides, it'll be a new challenge, and you know how much you love those." Ava couldn't help but smile at his encouragement. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was just another opportunity to push herself further, to deepen her understanding of the world. It was intimidating, but wasn't that the point? Growth didn't happen by staying in comfortable spaces. With a deep breath, Ava hit reply and wrote her confirmation email. She was in. The following week, Ava received an email with the details of her language exchange partner. His name was Amadou, and he was from Senegal. He was a third-year student studying anthropology and spoke French, Wolof, and English fluently. Ava felt a strange sense of excitement mixed with nervousness. Amadou's background was vastly different from hers, but that was exactly why she had joined the program, to learn from someone with a perspective so different from her own. When they met in person for the first time, Ava was struck by how confident and open Amadou seemed. He greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes shining with curiosity. There was an instant spark of connection, something about the way he seemed eager to share his world with her made her feel at ease. "Hello, Ava," Amadou said, his voice deep and friendly. "It's nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." Ava replied, feeling a bit shy. "I'm excited to get started." They sat down at a small table in a quiet corner of the cafe, the soft hum of campus life drifting in the background. Amadou started speaking to her in French, a language Ava was still relatively new to. Her heart raced as she tried to pick up on the words, but the sentences flowed so quickly, and the sounds felt unfamiliar. "Don't worry," Amadou said with a reassuring smile. "We'll take it slow. I want to learn more about you too." Ava appreciated his patience, but still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being on uneven ground. French was still challenging for her, and Wolof. She had never even heard it spoken before. But this was the beauty of the exchange. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about embracing the vulnerability of stepping into a space where both sides were learning, growing, and sharing. They spent the next hour talking about their cultures. Amadou explained the significance of family in Senegalese culture, how respect for elders and the community was a cornerstone of their way of life. He talked about traditional music and dance, and how they were passed down through generations. Ava shared her experiences growing up in the US and the deep connections she had with her family, even if the culture was less formal and more individualistic than what Amadou was used to. But what struck Ava the most was the way Amadou spoke about language. He explained how Wolof was not just a language but a way of seeing the world, with unique expressions and idioms that shaped the way people thought and communicated. Listening to him talk about Wolof made Ava realize how much she still had to learn about language, not just as a tool for communication, but as a lens through which people understood their realities. "I've never really thought about language that way," Ava admitted. "I mean, I've always loved learning languages, but it's always been about getting the words right, you know. I never really thought about how deeply language is tied to culture and identity." Amadou nodded thoughtfully. "Exactly. Language is more than just vocabulary or grammar. It's how we express our thoughts, our emotions, and our view of the world. The words we choose reflect who we are." Ava felt a sense of awe as she realized how true that was. She had spent so much time focused on fluency and precision, but now, she understood that the beauty of language lay in its ability to carry the essence of a culture, its values, its traditions, its heart. Over the next few weeks, Ava and Amadou continued their weekly meetings. Each session was a new discovery, a deeper dive into the richness of Senegalese culture, and a chance for Ava to practice her French and learn a few words of Wolof. But beyond the language lessons, Ava found that the most valuable part of their exchanges was the connection they were building. They weren't just learning words, they were learning each other's stories, each other's worlds. One day, as they wrapped up their meeting, Amadou turned to Ava with a thoughtful expression. "I've really enjoyed our conversations," he said, "and I think you're really starting to understand what I mean about language being more than words." Ava smiled, feeling proud of her progress. "Thank you. I've learned so much from you. I never realized how much I had to learn, not just about language, but about people and their experiences." Amadou grinned. "That's the beauty of language exchange. It's not just about speaking. It's about understanding. And I think you're doing a great job." Ava's heart swelled with gratitude. She had crossed boundaries in more ways than one, culturally, linguistically, and personally. This experience with Amadou wasn't just about expanding her vocabulary. It was about opening her heart to a new perspective, a new understanding of the world. As she walked back to her dorm after their meeting, Ava realized how much she had grown in such a short time. She had learned that language was not a barrier, but a bridge. A bridge to understanding, to connection, and to seeing the world through someone else's eyes. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when Ava received an email that would change the course of her week. She was sitting at her usual spot in the campus library, surrounded by textbooks and her notes for an upcoming linguistics exam. The early hours were always her favorite, when the world felt calm, and she could focus without distractions. She was almost done reviewing for her test when her phone buzzed on the table. The subject line caught her eye: urgent, invitation to speak at International Language Conference. Ava hesitated before opening the email. She had spoken at a few university events before, but this was something entirely different. The email explained that the organizers of an upcoming international language conference were looking for a few student speakers, and Dr. Langston had recommended Ava for the opportunity. It seemed surreal to her. How had she, a student still struggling with some aspects of language learning, become the recommended choice? The email was brief but to the point. It outlined the details of the conference, which would be held in a few weeks in a city halfway across the country. The topic was the power of language in bridging cultural divides, and speakers were expected to give a 15-minute presentation about how language could foster understanding and connection across cultural barriers. They wanted Ava to speak on her experiences in the language exchange program and the role of language in connecting people. Ava's pulse quickened. She felt a rush of excitement mixed with anxiety. The idea of speaking at such a prestigious event was an honor, an incredible chance to showcase what she had learned, but it also terrified her. She had never spoken at such a large-scale event before, and the thought of presenting in front of a crowd of professionals, professors, and other students made her stomach churn. Her mind raced. Could she really do this? Was she ready? She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Then she reminded herself of everything she had learned so far. This was her chance to push her limits, to take everything she had learned about language and cultural exchange, and share it with a larger audience. It was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Ava hit reply and confirmed her participation. The weeks leading up to the conference felt like a blur. She spent her days balancing studying for her linguistics exam, preparing for the presentation, and practicing her French and Wolof. The anxiety that had initially taken hold began to turn into something more manageable, determination. She spent hours working on her speech, refining her ideas, and rehearsing in front of the mirror. She even recorded herself speaking, playing it back to see if her words sounded as confident as they did in her mind. But despite all her preparation, doubt still lingered. She was constantly second-guessing herself. Was her speech compelling enough? Would she be able to speak clearly in front of a large crowd? What if she stumbled over her words? Her friends, however, were supportive as always. Sophia and Luca helped her practice, offering constructive feedback and encouragement. They reminded her that she had the experience, the knowledge, and the passion to make a meaningful contribution. And even if things didn't go perfectly, it was still a step toward growth. Finally, the day of the conference arrived. Ava stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room, smoothing down the wrinkles of her blazer. She took one last look at herself, her hair neatly pulled back, her outfit professional and polished, and took a deep breath. Her nerves were still there, but they were quieter now, overshadowed by the excitement of the opportunity. The conference hall was bustling with students, professors, and speakers from all over the world. Ava felt a sense of awe as she walked through the crowd. There were so many languages being spoken around her: Spanish, Arabic, German, Chinese. It was like a living, breathing example of the power of language. The diversity in the room made her feel small and insignificant, but it also filled her with a sense of purpose. She was part of something larger than herself, part of a global conversation about language and culture. As she stepped onto the stage for her presentation, the nerves hit again, but this time, she focused on the fact that she was about to do something meaningful. She had a message to share, a message about the way language could build bridges between people, how understanding and empathy could transcend borders. She stood at the podium, the bright lights above her making her feel almost weightless. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the microphone, but she smiled at the crowd, feeling a wave of warmth and connection as she looked out at the audience. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice slightly trembling at first, but growing steadier with each passing word. "My name is Ava, and I want to share with you the transformative power of language and cultural exchange, and how they shape the way we connect with each other." She took a deep breath and continued, speaking about her experiences in the language exchange program with Amadou. She explained how learning languages wasn't just about speaking words, it was about understanding the essence of a culture, its values, its history. She talked about the challenges she had faced, the moments of self-doubt, but also the incredible rewards that came with connecting deeply with someone from another part of the world. "As I spent time with my language exchange partner, Amadou," Ava said, her voice growing stronger, "I realized that the barriers between us weren't as big as I had initially thought. Yes, there were language differences, but at the heart of it, we both shared a desire to understand each other. And that desire, regardless of what language you speak, is what allows us to bridge cultural divides." Ava's words seemed to resonate with the audience. She could see their faces light up, nodding along as she spoke. Her nerves began to fade as she realized that this wasn't about perfection, it was about sharing a genuine experience, a story that was meaningful to her, and maybe to them as well. She continued, recounting how language was more than just communication, it was a gateway to understanding the values, the beliefs, and the dreams of people from different walks of life. It wasn't just about learning words, it was about seeing the world through someone else's eyes. As Ava wrapped up her presentation, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had faced her fears, and she had shared her story with a room full of people who understood the power of what she was saying. Afterward, several professors and students came up to her to offer their praise. Dr. Langston was there too, giving her a proud smile. "You did an incredible job, Ava," he said. "You spoke with so much heart. That's what makes the difference." Ava couldn't help but smile back, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't expected. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, faced her insecurities, and delivered a message that mattered. As she walked back to her hotel later that evening, her heart still racing with excitement, Ava realized something important. She had always been afraid of failing, of not being good enough. But today, she had proven to herself that failure wasn't the end, it was just a part of the journey. Every step forward, no matter how small, brought her closer to becoming the person she wanted to be. The weeks following Ava's presentation at the international conference felt like a whirlwind. The rush of speaking in front of such a large audience had been exhilarating, but now, back on campus, everything seemed quieter, more grounded. Her confidence had soared after her successful presentation, but as always, the next challenge was already on her mind. She had to keep moving forward. As Ava settled into a routine once again, studying, meeting with Amadou, working on her assignments, she found herself thinking a lot about connections. It was a theme that had been weaving itself through her journey, from her initial struggles with language to the profound bond she'd formed with Amadou. But now, she realized, the concept of connection had grown even more important to her. It wasn't just about connecting with others through language. It was about fostering connections that could open doors to new perspectives and new opportunities. Ava met with Sophia and Luca at their favorite coffee shop, the familiar hum of chatter and clinking mugs providing a sense of comfort. She'd been eager to catch up with them after the conference, and it felt good to sit back and reflect on everything that had happened. "You were amazing at the conference," Sophia said, sipping her latte with a proud smile. "I think you really inspired a lot of people with your story about Amadou and language exchange. It was so powerful." Ava smiled modestly, but she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her. It felt good to hear those words, especially coming from Sophia, who had been such a strong support throughout this journey. "I'm just glad it went well," Ava said, leaning back in her chair. "I was nervous for weeks, but once I started speaking, it just felt natural. Like, I knew what I was saying mattered." Luca grinned. "That's because it did matter. You spoke from the heart. That's why people connected with you." Ava thought about that for a moment. "It's funny, isn't it? I've always been so focused on learning the technical side of languages, getting the grammar right, memorizing vocabulary, but lately, I've realized that the real power of language isn't in the words themselves. It's in how we use those words to connect with each other, to share experiences, to bridge gaps." Sophia nodded. "Exactly. And the connections you've made through language are more than just academic or professional, they're personal, too. Like you and Amadou. You didn't just learn his language, you learned his story, his culture. And that's something no textbook can teach." Ava felt a rush of gratitude towards Sophia's words. She hadn't fully articulated it to herself until now, but Sophia was right. Her relationship with Amadou had been more than just a language exchange. It had been an exchange of ideas, of cultures, of hearts. That deepening connection had shown her how language could break down barriers. Sometimes without even needing to be perfect. Just the act of trying, of reaching out, was enough. Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Dr. Langston, subject line, important update, new opportunity. Ava clicked it open, her curiosity piqued. The email read, "Dear Ava, I hope you're doing well after your recent presentation. I wanted to reach out to let you know about a new opportunity that I think would be an excellent fit for you. The university is partnering with a global initiative focused on language and social justice, and we're looking for student representatives. The role involves helping to organize events, connecting with speakers from around the world, and facilitating discussions around the importance of language in social change. I believe your unique experiences and insights would be invaluable to this project. Please let me know if you're interested." Ava's heart skipped a beat. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she had been hoping for, a chance to combine her love for language with her growing desire to make a tangible impact in the world. The idea of working on a global initiative that used language to advance social justice felt like it could be the next big step in her journey. "Is that a new opportunity?" Luca asked, noticing the wide-eyed look on Ava's face. Ava nodded, her mind racing. "Yeah. It's a project about using language to promote social change. They're looking for student reps, and Dr. Langston thinks I'd be a good fit." Sophia raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. "That sounds incredible. You'd be perfect for it. You've been living the power of language, connecting people from different backgrounds. It's right up your alley." Ava felt the weight of the decision sink in. This wasn't just another academic project, it was a chance to make a real difference. But it also meant more responsibility, more time, and even more pressure to succeed. Could she balance this with everything else she had going on? And could she live up to the expectations? "I don't know," Ava said, her voice soft with uncertainty. "It's a big commitment. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to take on something like this." Luca leaned forward, his eyes sincere. "Ava, this is your moment. You've worked hard to get to where you are, and this project is a natural next step. You've got the heart, the skills, and the passion. If anyone can make an impact with this, it's you." Ava thought about his words. It was true that she had worked hard to get to this point. But the idea of jumping into something so important, so potentially life-changing, filled her with a mix of excitement and fear. She had always feared taking on too much, always been hesitant about stepping into roles that seemed too big for her. But what if this was exactly the kind of challenge she needed? "I'll do it," Ava said finally, her voice steady. "I'll accept the offer." Her friends grinned in unison, as if they had known all along she would. "That's awesome!" Sophia exclaimed. "I knew you'd say yes. You're going to do great things, Ava." Ava smiled back, feeling a sense of determination rising within her. This was more than just a career opportunity. It was a chance to expand the connections she had already begun building, connections with language, with people from different cultures, and with her own sense of purpose. As she made her way back to her dorm later that afternoon, Ava's mind was buzzing. This new project would push her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But with each step she took toward it, she knew that she was becoming part of something much bigger than herself. She was no longer just a student trying to master a language. She was someone who understood the deeper power of words, the power to create change, to connect, and to build bridges. And the connections she had made, both personal and academic, were the foundation of this new chapter. The first meeting of the global initiative felt like a dream. Ava entered the conference room, her mind racing with anticipation. This was more than just an academic project, it was an opportunity to make a tangible difference. The room buzzed with excitement as students, professors, and professionals from all over the world took their seats. Ava recognized a few familiar faces from the conference she had spoken at, but the rest were strangers. People from diverse backgrounds, all united by a common purpose, using language to drive social change. Dr. Langston had introduced her to the group earlier that week, and now it was time for her to dive in. She sat down at one of the large round tables, her notebook open in front of her, pen poised. The facilitator, a tall woman with short black hair and a commanding presence, stepped up to the front of the room. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice warm yet authoritative. "We're thrilled to have you here today. As you all know, this initiative is about more than just language. It's about the power of words to build empathy, foster understanding, and promote justice. Our mission is to use language as a tool for social transformation. And you all have been selected because we believe you have the potential to make a difference." Ava felt a wave of inspiration wash over her. The weight of the responsibility settled in, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt a surge of motivation. This was it. This was the kind of project she had always wanted to be a part of. The facilitator continued, outlining the goals of the initiative. The group would focus on creating a series of workshops, developing content for community outreach, and organizing events that highlighted the importance of language in bridging societal divides. They would be working with local organizations in different parts of the world, leveraging language skills to address issues like inequality, immigration, and cultural preservation. The first task would be to organize a global symposium on the role of language in activism. Ava's heart raced. She couldn't believe how quickly things were moving, but at the same time, she was thrilled by the challenge. As the meeting progressed, Ava found herself more and more engaged. She listened intently as her fellow students shared their experiences and ideas. There was Maya, a graduate student from India, who had worked on a project that used local languages to empower women in rural areas. And then there was Jamal, a linguistics major from Brazil, who was passionate about preserving endangered indigenous languages. Their stories were inspiring, and Ava knew that she was in the right place. The facilitator wrapped up the meeting with a call to action. "We need each of you to come up with a proposal for how you would like to contribute to the symposium. It can be a workshop, a presentation, or even a research project. You'll have the next few weeks to work on it, and we'll regroup to discuss our progress." As the room began to clear, Ava couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. There was so much to think about. So many ideas. So many possibilities. But she was determined to make the most of this opportunity. "Hey, Ava. Can we talk for a second?" Maya's voice interrupted her thoughts. Ava turned to see Maya approaching her with a warm smile. "Of course. What's up?" Ava replied, glad to see a familiar face. "I just wanted to say I really admire what you said about your experience with Amadou at the conference," Maya said. "It's clear that you have a deep understanding of how language can connect people on a personal level. I think that's exactly the kind of perspective we need for the symposium." Ava felt a rush of gratitude at the compliment. "Thank you, Maya. That means a lot. I've been thinking a lot about how to make language more than just something you learn in a classroom, you know. It's about connection, building bridges between people who might not otherwise have the chance to understand each other." Maya nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. That's why I think we should work together on something for the symposium. We both have experience in language exchange, and we could create a workshop that shows how language can break down barriers in real-world situations." Ava's eyes lit up. "I love that idea. We could even incorporate some of the research on how language affects social dynamics. Maybe even include some activities where participants practice real-life conversations." Maya grinned. "Exactly. Let's make it interactive and show people that learning a language is more than just memorizing vocabulary, it's about understanding each other." As they discussed their ideas further, Ava felt a surge of excitement. Working with Maya felt natural. They both shared a vision of using language to build meaningful connections, and Ava knew this was an opportunity to collaborate with someone who truly understood the power of language. In the days that followed, Ava and Maya worked tirelessly on their proposal. They spent hours researching, brainstorming ideas, and refining their workshop. They wanted to create something that wasn't just informative, but transformative, something that would challenge participants to think differently about the role of language in their lives. Ava found herself more energized than ever. Every time they met to discuss their project, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about completing an assignment. It was about creating something that could make a real impact. But with this newfound sense of purpose came new challenges. Ava found herself juggling her work for the initiative with her regular coursework, and it wasn't long before the pressure began to mount. She had always been a diligent student, but now it felt like there weren't enough hours in the day. One evening, as she sat in the library, her textbooks open in front of her, Ava felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her. Her eyes were heavy, and her mind kept wandering to the work she still had to do for the symposium. She glanced at the clock and realized that she had been sitting there for hours, barely making a dent in her assignments. Ava rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the fatigue. She knew she couldn't keep going at this pace. Something had to give. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Amadou. "How are you doing, Ava? I know things must be busy for you, but I hope you're taking care of yourself too." Ava smiled at the message. Even though they were miles apart, Amadou's support had never wavered. She took a deep breath and replied, "I'm doing well, just a little overwhelmed. But I'm excited about the symposium. It's a lot of work, but I think it's going to be amazing." The reply came almost immediately, "I'm proud of you. You've come so far, and I know you can handle whatever comes your way. Just remember to breathe and take it one step at a time." Ava felt a sense of calm wash over her as she read his words. Maybe she couldn't do everything at once, but she could take it one step at a time. That was the lesson she had learned over the past few months. Progress wasn't about doing everything perfectly, it was about making meaningful strides, no matter how small. With renewed clarity, Ava closed her books for the night. She would take care of herself and pace herself through this journey. After all, this was just the beginning. The days flew by in a blur of deadlines, meetings, and rehearsals. The symposium was quickly approaching, and Ava found herself buried in work. She and Maya had made tremendous progress with their workshop proposal, which had now taken shape into something more interactive and engaging. They designed a series of role-playing exercises where participants would use real-life scenarios to practice language skills and cultural sensitivity, activities meant to deepen the emotional connection between people from different backgrounds. But as the event drew closer, Ava couldn't shake the growing feeling of anxiety that seemed to follow her everywhere. She'd been involved in projects before, but this was different. The global reach of the symposium, the diverse audience, the high stakes, it all weighed heavily on her. The night before the event, Ava sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen. She had reviewed their presentation a dozen times, but each time, something felt off. There was a persistent worry in the back of her mind: what if the workshop wasn't good enough? What if people didn't connect with it the way she hoped? What if she failed? Ava's phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Dr. Langston. "Ava, just wanted to check in with you. I know you've been putting in a lot of work with the symposium. How are you feeling about tomorrow?" Ava stared at the message, the weight of her doubts pressing down on her chest. She hesitated for a moment, but then decided to respond honestly. "I'm feeling a bit nervous, to be honest. There's so much riding on this, and I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly." A few moments later, Dr. Langston replied, "You're going to do great. Remember, this isn't about perfection, it's about connection. You've already put so much of yourself into this project, and that's what will make it meaningful. Trust in the work you've done and the team you've built. You've got this." Ava smiled softly at the message. Dr. Langston's words were just what she needed to hear. This wasn't about getting everything perfect, it was about making an impact. She'd been so focused on doing everything flawlessly that she'd forgotten why she was doing this in the first place: to connect, to build bridges, to make a difference. With a deep breath, Ava closed her laptop. She knew she had done everything she could to prepare. Now, it was time to trust in herself and her team. The next morning, the atmosphere in the conference center was electric. Students, professors, and professionals gathered in the large ballroom, mingling, networking, and discussing the future of language in social change. Ava felt a flutter in her stomach as she and Maya set up their booth, organizing handouts and preparing their materials. The room was alive with energy, and for the first time, Ava realized just how much work had gone into this moment. "Ready?" Maya asked, adjusting the stack of flyers they had printed for the workshop. Ava nodded, her nerves giving way to determination. "Let's do this." The first few participants trickled into their workshop with curious expressions, and Ava felt her heart rate rise. She exchanged a quick glance with Maya, who smiled encouragingly. Ava stepped to the front, clearing her throat as she introduced the session. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Ava, and this is Maya. We're excited to have you join us today to explore the role of language in bridging cultural divides. Over the next hour, we'll be diving into some interactive exercises designed to help you experience firsthand how language can connect people, even when we come from different backgrounds." She paused, scanning the room of eager faces. It was now or never. "We're going to start with a simple exercise. I want each of you to pair up with someone you don't know. Then, one of you will share a personal story in your native language. The other person will try to listen without understanding the language. Afterward, we'll discuss how it felt to be in a conversation where you couldn't fully understand what was being said but could still feel the emotion behind the words." Ava watched as the participants moved into pairs, some looking uncertain but willing to give it a try. She and Maya stood at the front of the room, exchanging brief glances as they observed the interactions. Ava's mind wandered for a moment, wondering how the exercise was going. Was it making an impact? Were people truly connecting? As the pairs finished the exercise, Ava and Maya led a group discussion. Participants shared their thoughts, describing the challenge of not being able to understand the words but still feeling a sense of connection to the emotions behind them. "I felt really frustrated at first," one student said, "but then I realized that it wasn't about the words. It was about the body language, the tone, the energy of the person speaking. I could still understand the emotion, even without the language." Ava felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. This was exactly what they had hoped to achieve, a deeper understanding of how language was not just about words, but about the connection between people. Throughout the rest of the workshop, the participants engaged in more role-playing scenarios, practicing how to navigate cross-cultural interactions and discussing the challenges of communication when language barriers existed. The workshop was met with enthusiasm, and as it came to a close, Ava felt a rush of accomplishment. When the last participant left, Maya turned to Ava, her face lit up with excitement. "Ava, we did it. They were really engaged. I think this is exactly what we hoped for." Ava exhaled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. "I can't believe it. That was amazing. I was so nervous, but it felt right, you know. It felt like we were doing something that really mattered." Maya grinned. "It definitely mattered. We showed them that language is about more than just words. It's about understanding, empathy, and connection." As they packed up their materials, Ava reflected on how far she had come. Just a few months ago, she had been uncertain about her abilities, questioning whether she could ever make an impact. Now, standing in front of a room full of people, guiding them through an exercise that fostered real connections, she realized that she had found her purpose. The nerves and doubts had melted away in the face of the meaningful work they had just accomplished. The success of the workshop wasn't measured by perfection, it was measured by the connections they had created, by the change they had sparked in people's minds. Ava knew that this was just the beginning. The challenges ahead would be many, but she was ready to face them, one step at a time. The aftermath of the symposium left Ava with a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She had received numerous messages of gratitude from participants, many of whom shared how much the workshop had made them reflect on their approach to language and cultural differences. The words of encouragement flooded in, and Ava felt a quiet pride in what she and Maya had achieved. But as the days went on, the high from the event began to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of unease. The pressure to keep up the momentum was becoming overwhelming. More meetings, more deadlines, more expectations. It seemed like there was always something that needed attention, and no matter how hard Ava worked, it never felt like she was doing enough. One afternoon, while reviewing emails in her dorm room, Ava received a message from Dr. Langston. "Ava, I wanted to bring something to your attention. There's been a bit of concern from some members of the initiative about the structure of our upcoming project in the community outreach phase. I believe you're in a good position to take on a leadership role there, but I wanted to give you a heads up about the pressure that might come with it. Let's talk when you have a moment." Ava stared at the screen for several long seconds, the weight of the words sinking in. She was being asked to take on even more responsibility. She'd been hoping for a chance to step up, but now that it was here, a part of her felt unsure. Was she ready for this? She had already committed to so much. Was she overextending herself? She picked up her phone and texted Maya, a quick message to ask if they could meet up later. Ava needed to talk it through. She had always been the kind of person who thrived on challenges, but this felt different. It wasn't just about doing something she loved, it was about balancing everything that came with it. Later that evening, the two friends met in a small coffee shop near campus. Ava ordered a cappuccino and sat down at a table, feeling the familiar weight of the conversation ahead. "Hey, what's up? You look stressed," Maya remarked, her eyes scanning Ava's face with concern. Ava exhaled deeply, her fingers wrapped around the warm cup. "I got an email from Dr. Langston. They want me to take a leadership role in the community outreach phase of the project. And at first, I was excited, but now, I don't know. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I thought I could handle everything, but it's starting to feel like too much." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Wow, that's huge. But I can see why they'd ask you. You've been doing amazing work, and you really get the whole concept of language and connection. But I get it. It's a lot to juggle." Ava nodded. "Exactly. I'm already struggling to keep up with everything. I love the work I'm doing, but it's starting to feel like I can't breathe. And I don't want to let anyone down, especially Dr. Langston, who's been so supportive." Maya leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Ava, it's okay to not take everything on at once. You're doing incredible things already. You don't have to say yes to everything. You need to make sure you're taking care of yourself, too." Ava looked down at her coffee, stirring it absent-mindedly. She knew Maya was right, but it was hard to let go of the fear that she might miss out on an opportunity or disappoint someone. I don't want to be the person who isn't doing enough. I'm afraid that if I don't push myself, I'll fall behind. I've come so far, and it feels like now is the time to take it all to the next level. But maybe I'm not ready for that yet." Maya's eyes softened. "Look, you've already done so much. And you're making a real impact, Ava. But you can't pour from an empty cup. If you keep pushing yourself too hard, you're not going to be able to give your best, and that's not fair to you or to anyone else." Ava sighed, feeling the weight of those words sink in. She had always prided herself on her ability to push through adversity, but maybe it was time to reconsider her approach. She didn't have to do it all, and it was okay to admit when she needed a break. "Maybe I need to set some boundaries," Ava said quietly, as if the idea was just beginning to take shape. "I've been so focused on saying yes to everything, but maybe I need to learn how to say no when it's too much." Maya smiled, a mixture of pride and relief in her expression. "Exactly. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're not committed, it just means you're taking care of yourself. You can't help others if you're running on empty." Ava took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. "Thanks, Maya. I think I needed to hear that. I'm going to talk to Dr. Langston." I'll explain that I'm really passionate about the project, but I need to find a balance that works for me. Maya nodded. That's a smart move. You've already shown what you're capable of, and I'm sure Dr. Langston will understand. You're doing great, Ava. Don't forget that. The next day, Ava sat down with Dr. Langston in the small office on campus. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the air was filled with the scent of coffee and paper. Ava's nerves were in full swing as she gathered her thoughts, trying to figure out how to approach the conversation. Dr. Langston smiled warmly as she sat down across from Ava. I'm glad you could make it, Ava. I wanted to check in with you about the community outreach project. I know you've been juggling a lot, but I believe you're exactly what we need for this leadership role. Ava swallowed, then spoke with more confidence than she felt. Dr. Langston, I truly appreciate the trust you're placing in me. This project means so much to me, and I've really enjoyed working on it. But I have to be honest with you, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm already involved in so many aspects of the initiative, and I'm starting to feel like I'm stretched too thin. I don't want to let anyone down, but I think I need to find a balance. Dr. Langston looked at her for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. Ava, I completely understand. You've been doing outstanding work, and it's clear that you're dedicated. I want you to know that taking on too much is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom to know when to ask for help or adjust your workload. Let's figure out a way to still make a significant contribution without compromising your well-being. You don't have to do it all yourself. Ava exhaled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, Dr. Langston. I really appreciate that. They spent the next few minutes discussing ways Ava could still contribute to the community outreach phase without taking on a leadership role. Ava would focus on providing support, offering her expertise in language and connection without being responsible for managing the entire project. It was a compromise that allowed her to remain involved while keeping her stress in check. Later that evening, Ava sat on her bed, reflecting on the conversation. It was one of the hardest decisions she had made, but she felt a sense of clarity. She didn't have to be everything to everyone, and it was okay to set boundaries. The most important thing was to stay true to her values and her mission, and that meant prioritizing her health and well-being. As she closed her eyes, Ava realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter in her journey. One where she could make a difference without losing herself in the process. The days following her conversation with Dr. Langston were a turning point for Ava. She had learned a valuable lesson in humility and balance, two things she hadn't fully understood before. The temptation to do everything and prove her worth had almost consumed her, but now, she felt lighter. The weight she had been carrying seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of calm that allowed her to think more clearly. Ava spent the next few days focusing on her current commitments without adding more to her plate. She still attended the meetings for the community outreach initiative, but she no longer felt the pressure to lead every aspect of it. Instead, she took on a supporting role, offering insights where she could, but not overextending herself. This new approach allowed her to invest more time in the personal relationships that had always grounded her, particularly with her family and Maya. One evening, after dinner, Ava sat in the living room of her apartment, reflecting on how much had changed since she'd first arrived at university. She had been filled with uncertainty back then, unsure of where her path would lead. Now, she had discovered a deep passion for connecting people through language and understanding, something that was becoming more than just a career aspiration, it was becoming a way of life. As Ava scrolled through her phone, she noticed an email from the symposium organizers. It was a follow-up message thanking her and Maya for their contributions and highlighting the success of their workshop. But there was something else, a request. We've received a great deal of positive feedback about your workshop, and we'd love to invite you both to present at the next global conference. The theme will be on global communication in an increasingly interconnected world, and we believe your work could be a key part of the conversation. Would you be interested in collaborating with us again? Ava's heart skipped a beat. The invitation was an honor. But as she read it over again, she felt that familiar wave of uncertainty. This would mean more travel, more work, and potentially even more stress. Was she ready to dive back into such a big commitment? Before making any decision, Ava needed to talk it through. She knew that Maya would be the best person to give her perspective. The next day, the two of them met for lunch at their favorite cafe near campus. Over a bowl of fresh salads and iced tea, Ava shared the email and the conflicting emotions she was feeling. Maya listened carefully, nodding along as Ava spoke. "I get why this is exciting, Ava," Maya said, her voice thoughtful. "It's a huge opportunity, and you've already done such a great job. But I can also see why you're hesitant. The last thing you want is to burn out, right?" Ava nodded. "Exactly. I love the work we're doing, and I don't want to miss out on these opportunities. But I also don't want to sacrifice my health or peace of mind. I've learned that it's okay to take a step back and think things through before jumping into something new." Maya smiled. "You've learned a lot, and I'm proud of you for recognizing that. You're not the same person who started this journey. You've grown so much. It's not about saying no to everything, it's about choosing the things that align with who you are and what you truly want." Ava took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief. Maya's words hit home. It wasn't about running from opportunities, it was about making decisions that would bring her fulfillment without overwhelming her. "I think you're right," Ava said after a moment. "I've been so focused on taking everything that comes my way, but maybe I need to be more intentional. This conference sounds amazing, but I need to ask myself, why do I want to do it? Is it because I feel like I have to, or is it because I'm genuinely excited about it?" Maya reached across the table, giving her friend a reassuring squeeze on the hand. "You've already proven yourself. No matter what you decide, you'll be fine. And the fact that you're thinking this through is a huge step forward. Whatever you choose, just make sure it feels right for you." That evening, Ava sat down with her laptop, drafting a response to the email. She appreciated the offer and was genuinely honored, but after a few moments of reflection, she realized that taking on the responsibility of presenting at another global conference would be too much right now. She wasn't running from it, she was just choosing to prioritize her mental and emotional well-being. She typed out her response, expressing her gratitude and offering to help in a more limited capacity. "Thank you for the invitation. I am truly honored by the recognition and excited about the future of this initiative. However, after careful consideration, I feel that I need to step back from any additional commitments at this time to focus on my current responsibilities. I hope there will be future opportunities to collaborate, and I would love to stay involved in any capacity that aligns with my current workload." She clicked send before she could second-guess herself. The decision felt right. The next few weeks were a time of consolidation for Ava. With the pressure of additional commitments off her plate, she found herself with more time to connect with others, especially her family. She spent the weekends on video calls with her mom, dad, and younger brother, sharing updates about her projects and listening to their stories. Her father, in particular, had always been a source of inspiration for her, a man who had worked hard to provide for his family and instilled in Ava the value of perseverance and service. In one conversation, her father asked about the future. "What are your long-term goals, kiddo?" he asked, his voice calm and steady, as always. Ava paused, thinking about it for a moment. "I want to continue using language as a tool for change. I want to bridge cultural divides, create understanding, and work on social justice issues. But I've realized that I can't do it all at once. I need to make sure I'm focused on the right things so I can make the most impact without losing myself in the process." Her father smiled, pride evident in his voice. "Sounds like you're figuring it out, one step at a time. That's all anyone can do." The word stayed with Ava, and in that moment, she realized that she didn't have to have everything figured out right now. The path ahead was long, but she was on the right one. Ava had learned that sometimes the best way forward was not by rushing ahead, but by taking the time to pause, reflect, and make choices that aligned with her values. She had come a long way since her days of uncertainty and doubt, and while the future was still uncertain, Ava now felt a deep sense of peace and clarity. Whatever came next, she knew she was ready to face it, with intention, confidence, and balance. The days following her decision to step back from additional commitments were quiet, but they held a sense of anticipation for Ava. It was as though everything was slowly leading to something bigger, and the weight of it lingered in the background, like an unspoken promise. The truth was, Ava had reached a point in her journey where the choices she made now would shape her future, not just academically, but personally, as well. The culmination of months of work on the language and cultural project was approaching, the final phase was fast approaching. The community outreach initiative that she had been deeply involved in was about to take flight. It was a collaboration between several universities, NGOs, and grassroots organizations, and Ava's team had been tasked with leading workshops on language acquisition and cultural understanding. It was the kind of work that she had always dreamed of. Meaningful, impactful, and directly connected to her passion for breaking down barriers and fostering connection. But there was a catch. Dr. Langston had sent Ava an urgent message a few days earlier, requesting a meeting. When they sat down in Dr. Langston's office, Ava could sense that something was different. The atmosphere was charged with something more than just the usual urgency, there was a weight to it. Dr. Langston closed the door behind them before sitting across from Ava, a look of deep contemplation on her face. "Ava," Dr. Langston began, "I need to talk to you about something important. There's a change in plans for the outreach initiative. We've encountered a significant hurdle, and we need someone to step in and lead a pivotal component of the project. I believe you're the right person for the job." Ava's heart skipped a beat. She had already committed herself to this project, but this sounded different. "What's happened?" she asked, her voice steady but her mind racing. "We're running into issues with local partners in one of the community centers. There's a misalignment between our goals and their needs. The workshops we've designed might not resonate the way we hoped. This is where you come in. I need you to take over the redesign of the curriculum and lead a team of facilitators in making the necessary adjustments. It's a huge responsibility, but I know you're capable." Ava's mind immediately went into overdrive. The same internal struggle she had faced before resurfaced. Could she handle this? Was she ready to dive back into the deep end? It felt like everything was building to this very moment, a final test of all she had learned about balance, boundaries, and the commitment to making a difference. Taking a breath, she finally spoke. "I understand, Dr. Langston. But I need to make sure that this isn't going to put me in a position where I'm overwhelmed. I've been careful to avoid overcommitting myself, but I want to do what's best for the project. Can we talk through what this would look like?" Dr. Langston's face softened. "Of course, Ava. I wouldn't ask this of you if I didn't think you could handle it. We're not asking for a complete overhaul, but a targeted shift. You've already contributed so much, and now this is an opportunity to make a lasting impact." Ava thought about the gravity of the situation. She knew what this would mean. Taking on the role would push her boundaries once again, but it would also give her a chance to lead with intention, to craft a curriculum that could transform the way people viewed language and culture. This wasn't just an academic project, it was a chance to effect real change. But it also meant facing her fear of failure. "I need a day to think about it," Ava said, the words feeling heavy as they left her mouth. "I want to be sure that I can give this my best without compromising my well-being." Dr. Langston smiled, a mixture of understanding and respect in her gaze. "Take all the time you need, Ava. I trust you to make the right decision." The next 24 hours were an emotional whirlwind. Ava spent the night pacing in her apartment, unable to shake the weight of the decision ahead. On one hand, she had the opportunity to make a significant impact, to push herself in ways she hadn't yet done. On the other hand, she feared that stepping back into such a demanding role would leave her vulnerable to the very burnout she had worked so hard to avoid. She reached out to Maya, who agreed to meet her at a quiet park near campus. As they walked along the winding path, Ava shared everything with her friend, the opportunity, the stakes, and the internal conflict that had kept her up all night. Maya listened attentively, occasionally offering words of encouragement, but mostly just letting Ava talk. Finally, when Ava had exhausted herself with worry, Maya spoke. "Ava," she said softly, "I think you've already answered your own question." Ava looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Maya smiled. "You've been so focused on balancing everything that you've forgotten what really matters, your passion. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. But this? This is something you care about deeply. If you want to do this, go ahead. If it feels right, then it's worth doing. You know your limits, and you know when you need help. This isn't about doing everything by yourself, this is about leading in a way that works for you." Ava felt a sense of relief wash over her. Maya was right. This wasn't about proving she could do it all. It was about leading with purpose, making a real difference, and doing it in a way that honored her well-being. It was okay to take on this responsibility, as long as she stayed true to her values and didn't lose sight of what mattered most. The next day, Ava met with Dr. Langston again. This time, she was ready. "I've thought about it," Ava said, her voice steady. "I want to take on the role. But I need to make sure we're clear on the boundaries. I'm committed to this project, but I can't do it alone. I'll need a supportive team, and I want to make sure we approach this in a way that respects everyone's well-being." Dr. Langston's eyes lit up with a sense of pride. "I knew you'd come to the right decision. We'll have a strong team in place, and I'll make sure you have the resources you need. Together, we'll make this work." The following weeks were a blur of meetings, late nights, and intense planning. Ava threw herself into the project with renewed purpose, leading her team with a sense of clarity that came from knowing she was doing the right thing. She focused on crafting a curriculum that was both relevant and empathetic, ensuring that it addressed the needs of the community while respecting their cultural identities. The project launched with a success that exceeded expectations, and Ava felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she watched the participants engage and connect with the material. It wasn't just about language, it was about creating a space where people could truly listen to each other, where understanding wasn't just taught but felt. As the final phase of the initiative concluded, Ava reflected on how far she had come. She had faced her deepest fears and emerged stronger, not by avoiding challenges but by embracing them with balance and purpose. The project had been a success, not just in the work they had done, but in the lessons Ava had learned about herself along the way. She was ready for whatever came next, knowing that her journey was only just beginning. The days after the project wrapped up were a blur of congratulatory emails, thank you notes, and heartfelt messages from colleagues, participants, and community leaders. Ava had given her all to this final phase of the initiative, and it had paid off in ways she hadn't even imagined. The community outreach program had exceeded expectations, with not only academic success but also the deeper connections formed between people who had never met but found common ground through language, culture, and understanding. Standing on the stage at the closing ceremony, looking out at the faces of the community members, partners, and her team, Ava felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. This was why she had chosen this path, to help build bridges, to foster empathy, and to bring people together in meaningful ways. Dr. Langston, standing beside her, gave her a small nod of approval, her eyes reflecting the same pride. "You did it, Ava," Dr. Langston whispered, a smile tugging at her lips. Ava's heart swelled as she took in the success of the project. But the overwhelming feeling wasn't just one of accomplishment, it was a quiet, contented realization that she had finally found her place, her purpose, and a way to move forward with intention. As the event came to a close, Ava walked off the stage and into the arms of her team. There was Maya, grinning widely, holding up her phone to take a selfie, capturing the moment. Ava laughed, her heart light. This was a victory shared by so many, and it was one they could all be proud of. After the ceremony, Maya pulled Ava aside. "So, what's next for you? Any big plans?" Ava paused, taking a deep breath. She had asked herself that very question for weeks now, unsure of what the future would hold. But now, standing in this moment of clarity, she knew the answer. "I think I'm ready for a new chapter," Ava said, her voice filled with conviction. "I want to keep pushing forward with the things I'm passionate about: language, cultural understanding, and community. But I also want to make sure I'm doing it in a way that feels right for me. I'm learning to take things one step at a time, focusing on what really matters." Maya smiled. "You've come so far, Ava. I'm proud of you." Ava smiled back, feeling the weight of her friend's words settle in her heart. It wasn't just about the project anymore, it was about the person she had become. She had faced her fears, embraced her passions, and learned to listen to her inner voice, knowing when to step forward and when to step back. The next day, as she sat in her favorite cafe, reflecting on the past few months, Ava felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had spent so long chasing after success, trying to prove herself to others and, more importantly, to herself. But now, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about living in alignment with her values and understanding that success wasn't always defined by accolades and recognition. Sometimes, success was about the quiet moments of growth, the ones that happened in between the highs and lows, when you learned to trust yourself. Ava's phone buzzed, and she picked it up to see a message from her mom. "I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you. You've done something incredible, and I can't wait to see where this journey takes you. Keep shining." Her heart swelled as she read the message. She had done it, she had made her family proud. But more importantly, she had made herself proud. As the months passed, Ava's focus shifted to new projects. She continued to build on the foundation she had laid in her community outreach work, partnering with international organizations that aligned with her mission of fostering cultural understanding. She wasn't rushing anymore. She was building slowly, carefully, and with intention. Each step she took was deliberate, grounded in her values and her growing understanding of what it meant to lead with empathy and self-awareness. Ava had become a mentor to others, those who were beginning their journeys, unsure of where to go or how to balance their ambitions with their well-being. She shared her story with them, not as someone who had it all figured out, but as someone who had made mistakes, learned from them, and was still learning. It was in these moments that she realized how much of her own growth came from helping others find their way. One afternoon, as she sat with a small group of students in a cafe, talking about the intersection of language and social justice, Ava felt the weight of a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling. And it wasn't something that could be measured by the number of conferences she attended or the number of accolades she received. It was about the impact she was having on the lives of others, and on her own life. "I used to think I had to do everything, be everything," Ava shared with the students. "But I've learned that the real power comes from knowing when to say yes, and when to say no. You have to listen to yourself, trust your instincts, and understand what truly matters." The students nodded, taking in her words. Ava could see the spark of realization in their eyes, and it filled her with hope. The cycle of learning, sharing, and growing would continue, both for her and for those she mentored. And that, she knew, was what truly mattered. As Ava continued her work, she began to realize that this was just the beginning. Her story was still unfolding, and there was so much more to explore. She had learned that the journey was never really about the destination. It was about the moments of growth, the relationships she built, and the wisdom she gained along the way. In a quiet moment of reflection, Ava looked out at the horizon. She had come so far from the uncertain young woman who had first stepped onto this path. But the journey wasn't over. There were still stories to be told, connections to be made, and challenges to face. She was ready for all of it. The future, it seemed, was a wide-open field of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Ava felt at peace with the idea that she didn't have to have it all figured out. One step at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough.